Welcome to Democracy-ish. I'm Danielle Moodie.
And I'm Wajahat, and Danielle is in extra salty mood today. That's why we were late. She goes, there's just too much clownery afoot, and she needed a minute to exhale. But we are here, folks.
We're here. And no, I am
Oh, is that me?
not in a great mood today, dear friends, but I am so happy that all of you are here. And what would make it so that I'm not in a great mood on this Monday? Oh, I don't know. Just like the absurdity of the times that we are living in, it's absurd, Waj. It is insane. It is disgusting. It is sacrilegious. You name a word. What do you make of this? I think we ended the week with this, and we're going to show another image that the White House thinks is really appropriate to post as well. But I mean, what do you make of this?
So I want people to see that the White House official account retweeted this, but who did they retweet? Donald J. Trump, the president of the United States of America. So it wasn't some MAGA incel. It wasn't some troll. It was a 79-year-old man who's the president of the United States of America, who went to the Pope's funeral, who fell asleep during the Pope's funeral, while everyone else was wearing a black suit out of respect. This mother effer wore his stupid red tie and blue suit. White Catholics in particular are part of his base. I think 60 to 70% of them voted for Donald Trump. And he said, you know what? Lindsey Graham, another bootlicker who lives inside the recesses of my anus, decided to tweet out that the new Pope during the conclave session should be Donald Trump, who I don't even know if he's Catholic, probably the least religious person on earth. And then we shared that, and people are like, there's no way that could be true. It's true. Lindsey Graham, the senator, said the next Pope should be Donald Trump. Donald Trump should be the next Pope. So Donald Trump thought was hilarious. So then he takes this AI image of himself as the Pope, and the White House then retweets it. And then they say, oh, I'm just kidding. Mind you, the Pope, who is the religious and spiritual figurehead of millions of people around the world, has just been buried, Danielle. So tell me the punchline. Where's the joke?
I don't know, because conclave begins this week, which is one of the most, if not the most solemn occasions inside of the Catholic religion, which is the process at which a pope passes, and then bishops and cardinals gather to select the next pope to be the spiritual head of this mass religion. And I just I looked at this image, and I don't care what religion you are, or if you're not a religion, it's just disgusting. And that's like the exhaustion that you're seeing and seeing on my face and hearing today is just like, it's like the depravity just knows honestly no end. And it's like, so you see this photo and you think, okay, like disgusting. And, so many Catholics tweeted and posted and said like, none of this was funny. And then this, Waj, then this.
Okay, first of all, we have to read it. Please. Happy May 4th to all, including, wait, I always love this. Happy May 4th to all. That's all you have to say. But no, because they're petty, vindictive, vain, cruel, and immature. Happy May the 4th to all, including the radical left lunatics who are fighting so hard to bring Sith lords, murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, and well-known MS-13 gang members back into our galaxy. You're not the rebellion, you're the empire. May the 4th be with you. Now, people who don't know what the May the 4th is, right? If you've watched Star Wars, there is a famous saying, may the force be with you. It's what the good guys say, right? Obi-Wan says it, Luke says it, Han says it, may the force be with you. The force is this powerful, mysterious type of spiritual energy you could tap into. If you tap into the good side of the force, you become part of the rebellion, you help people, you become a Jedi. If you tap into the dark side of force, you become a Sith Lord, a fascist. The Sith Lords are represented often by, wait for it, not a green lightsaber, a red lightsaber. So the White House decides to have this photo of Donald Trump with a red lightsaber, with muscles he's never had, standing like what, as the father of eagles in front of the American flag, not realizing they got their pop culture completely wrong. And in their statement,
but Waj, like, here's the thing, because you say they got their pop culture really wrong, and I'm like, did they? You just laid out who the bad people are, who the evil people are, right? And like what they're represented by. So did they get it wrong, or did they get it right?
I mean, they got it right unintentionally because he sounds like a Sith. Like, just listen again. The radical left lunatics fighting so hard, murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners. You're the empire. You're not the rebellion. What's really interesting about this, folks, if we can dig deeper, is they truly believe that they're the good guys. All right-wing groups, extremist groups, whether it's, white supremacists, white nationalists, whether it's MAGA, right? All right-wing groups, even the more extreme terrorist groups like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, KKK, they all think they're the good guys. They think they're either the hero or the victim. This is very important. And I think everyone else is the villain, right? The villain that is, taking away their babies and replacing them and imposing wokeness upon them. So in their very twisted, upside down mindset, despite literally sounding like a Sith and posting a photo of Donald Trump as a Sith Lord, they still think, Danielle, they're Luke Skywalker and the rebellion.
I just, and to Jules's point, they actually think they're action heroes. They think that this is all a game. And that's the thing that makes me so sick to my stomach today, is that everything is a joke and everything is a game to them. People suffering, people dying, people hiding, people living in fear. Like, that's a joke to them. That's fuel to them. That's something that they, that they love to harp on. It's what gives them their power. And this is the image that they concoct of Donald Trump, because this is how distorted, how disconnected from reality they truly are. Like, when I look at this, like, there is nothing funny. It's like, when you recognize that there are some people that exist in full reality and there are others that absolutely do not, and that they probably need interventions, medical or otherwise, to help them understand and process reality. Except this is an entire party of people who, when they see Donald Trump, they don't see the hunched over man that was sitting on television with Kirsten Welker, saying all types of things that we're going to get into shortly. They see this, right? They see this Rambo character, this tough guy that's full of muscles, and he literally couldn't be further from this image if you fucking tried. And so to look at this, to me, it's just so terrifying, because I know that the word has lost meaning when we say they're a cult, but if you watch documentaries on cults, the serious nature of cults, how people divorce their families themselves from reality to follow this figure, right? Over a cliff, give up everything, give up their lives, their livelihoods, all of these things, and cease to think critically or do anything for themselves outside of what this spiritual figure or this political leader is guiding them to. This is what this shit looks like. And it's it's not just a small group of people living in some field in fucking Oregon. It's 77 million people.
It's, you mentioned the word cult, and I think it's an important word to keep bringing up, a word that is often, actually rarely, never used in mainstream media, but a word that we've been mentioning ever since the first Trump administration. It is a cult. You see this happening during World War II with the rise of fascists. Mussolini, right? The tough man, the strong man, right? You see the image of the tough man, strong man that was deliberately orchestrated and performed and then mainstreamed through Nazi Germany, Goebbels, right, and Leni Riefenstahl, the movies, this epic sweeping narrative of the powerful, pristine, Hitler regime, right? This is very deliberate. The use and abuse of image and sound and media, the manipulation, right? Don't believe your eyes. Don't trust your ears. You can't trust everyone else. You can only trust me. And even though you see in front of you an aging, decrepit 79-year-old man who falls asleep during his own cabinet hearing where everyone went around last week and gave him verbal fellatio. No. He's not that old, decrepit, aging man. It's this, right? Oh, no. They're not violent insurrectionists. They're freedom fighters. Oh, no. Even though it's clear to everyone that he lost the 2020 election. No, he won. Oh, no. He's potent. He's virile. Oh, no. He's not a vulgarian. No, God wants him. He's the champion, even though he might not be Catholic. Don't believe your eyes. Don't trust your ears. Who are you going to believe, the radical leftist lunatics or us? And this is the cult. They believe this. They truly believe he is a warrior, a fighter, strong, potent. And the reality is he looks like this.
And that, I mean, like, it's, I guess that's what is so hard to truly, I think, Waj, reckon with in this moment, is that we have been trying to clean off the rose-colored glasses, to lift the wool from people's eyes, to say, no, this is reality, not this alternate universe that they've created. This is reality. And what they've been able to do is to continue along with what Steve Bannon had said, which is flood the zone. If you flood the zone with images of Donald Trump on horseback, on, fighting in Star Wars as the Pope, if you flood, right, all of these, your mind and every, social media outlet with these images and with these comments and with these lies, then eventually those that didn't vote begin to question, those that didn't vote for him begin to question, well, maybe I'm the one that's caught up in something that is this radical left, like maybe it's me. And the whole thing is that when you go to court, what do they say when you're on trial? You need to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. And what Donald Trump and MAGA have been able to do over the course of nearly a decade at this point is to conjure reasonable doubt.
Yep.
Like, that's the point. Because if you cannot trust what you see and hear and believe, if you've cast away your family, your friends, your colleagues, right? Because they're lost to the radical left, then like all that's left is to hold on to this idea and image because it's all that you have. Right. And like that's a place of conjured desperation and crisis of identity and knowing and reality that they've been able to do for 9 years.
And, I'm sorry to lean into this, but, going into the Sith real quick before we move on to this disastrous interview he had with Meet the Press, where he reveals exactly what he is. For those, spoiler alert, who haven't watched Star Wars, what happens is, in the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, the prequels, there is a republic, right? There are senators. And then the Emperor is really the Phantom Menace, right? He is the Sith Lord behind the scenes who's hiding, right? And then he uses and he manufactures, much like Hitler, a crisis. And then in the crisis, he declares himself, wait for it, Danielle, Emperor. And you find out that the Sith Lord all along was right in front of your face, manipulating the strings, right? And secretly, not so secretly, trying to gain power, right? The interesting thing is I don't think Donald Trump necessarily is the emperor, even though he thinks he's the emperor. I think he's a puppet. And I think he's just being used by the oligarchy and the wealthy and the fascists, right? The Steve Banns, the Stephen Millers, the Peter Thiels. I think they're the emperors who realize, oh, this is our, if you will, old decaying husk of a man, and we can ride him towards right-wing authoritarianism. And Donald Trump is perfectly fine playing that role of the authoritarian, right? And the way they sell it to the public, to about 40% of America, is we need this strong man, even if he is a bulldozer to democracy and freedoms, because they are taking your freedoms. So in order to defeat them, we have to do something so radical. We have to declare martial law. We have to unleash the military. We have to engage in attack of the clones, right? We have to crush them, because look at the language they use. The radical, can we go back 1 second? The radical left lunatics who are fighting so hard to bring Sith Lords, murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, and MS-13 gang members. What do you do, Danielle, to take care of that type of a violent problem? Can't you justify anything and everything? If indeed you believe that murderers and rapists are coming after your kids, can't you, I don't know, unleash the National Guard and military against the enemy from within? The language that Donald Trump used, which is why I'm glad we're spending a little bit of time on this. This is so dangerous. People just laugh at it, but they don't realize this type of repetition, right, makes the rest of us look like murderers and rapists to about 40% of American voters who are perfectly fine, many of them, folks, with the use of violence to save their democracy.
And then, and to move on to where, where this conversation
There you go.
went yesterday. Kirsten Welker is interviewing Donald Trump on Meet the Press, and she is saying, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president when talking about due process and those being afforded due process who are being deported from this country? And Donald Trump's response was, again, I don't know. And I want to sit with this for a moment, because last month, right, Meet the Press, Kirsten Welker interviews Secretary of State Marco Rubio, asked the same question. He says, yes, of course, when asked whether every person in the United States is entitled to due process. Trump, however, isn't so sure. When asked, he said, quote, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. Trump replied when asked by Meet the Press moderator Kirsten Welker whether he agreed with Rubio. His comments came under, this wide-ranging interview. But the point being here is that when the oath that you take as president, and I want people to also go harken back to the visual of Donald Trump on Inauguration Day. Not as if it matters, but I think that it matters for point of visual. Donald Trump did not put his hand on the Bible and swear an oath to uphold the Constitution. He did not, right? And so people can say, well, it doesn't matter because he's not religious, blah, 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 blah. It was a conscious decision to not do that, to not put your hand on the Bible and say that I am taking this oath as president of the United States to uphold the Constitution. So when Donald Trump is asked now in an interview, isn't it, and going back again, the question, don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States as president? And Donald Trump says, I don't know. Folks, that is not a I don't know. That is a unequivocal no, actually, I don't, because I am the law. Right? Because the Supreme Court of the United States said that I have the power to do whatever it is that I want. I have absolute immunity. I am the law. And he who protects his country, as Donald Trump posted several weeks ago, doesn't break the law. So if in your mind, not only are we talking about the disassociation from reality with these images and the things that are being said by the right with regard to, shouldn't he be Pope? Shouldn't he be this? This is the muscle. This is this, that, and the other thing. Connect the dots to when asked if he should uphold the Constitution of the United States. And he is saying, no, I don't need to do that. And there is not anyone who is going to stop him, because everyone, the 77 million, on top of all of congressional Republicans, on top of those that are in the Senate, on top of the red state governors, are all aligned with this reality that Donald Trump is their savior that was brought here to fix this horrible country from ever having to advance, ever having to have any progress, ever having to admit anyone else other than white, cis, hetero, straight men into the project that is America. And
also, you still see mainstream media and corporate media slowly waking up, right, Donald Trump is testing the judiciary. Donald Trump is, putting pressure on the rule of law. Like, no, this man, as Danielle said, has openly told you before he was elected that he wants to be a dictator for a day. He openly said that he wants to terminate the Constitution. When he was president, like Danielle said, he quoted Napoleon. Folks, this is a man who quoted Hitler and said that he will unleash the military against the enemy from within. This is a man who incited a violent insurrection. This is a man to this day openly says, I won the 2020 election, that he lost. When he's asked, do you have to uphold the Constitution? Basic stuff that even my children, hey, children, does the president of the United States have to uphold the Constitution? All of my kids, ages 5 to 10, will say, yes, they know. He deliberately is putting sand in the gears because he wants to be the Phantom Menace, the emperor who comes in and says, sorry, folks, I have to protect you from the radical left, and it is my duty and power as the executive, the commander-in-chief, to declare martial law and punt the election. People always say, oh, Waj, you're exaggerating. Am I? Like, 2018, 2019, I said he wanted to leave peacefully. Did he? I said the Republican Party would not vomit him out. They'd become just like him. They did. And lo and behold, remember what we said right before the election and right after he won? He's going to run for a third term. People thought we were nuts. Danielle.
What did he do 2 weeks ago? He opened up his campaign store with 2028 merch. And when asked right now, again, were you kidding about 2028 and running? He said, no, my people are looking into it.
There you go.
And there are methods and quote options for moving forward. So I said, I posted this today on Substack as well. I don't honestly know, Waj, what else needs to be said and done for people to understand at this stage of the coup, at this stage of the takeover, that Donald Trump actually is not kidding, that none of this was ever a fucking joke. It was mainstream corporate media that made it a joke. It was mainstream corporate media that made it clickbait. But the reality is that everything that he's been saying over the last 9 years has been true. And so when he says, I am looking into methods so that I can stay in office, right? There are no methods in this country that permit a third term that is legal. There is not one fucking method that you could use that is legal. So what are we talking about here?
Yep. No, and this is the thing. It's more like, look, folks, let's just go back to this real quick. This is him on Meet the Press. This is him on Meet the Press. This is like, well, used to be respected. The president of the United States is literally meeting the press and talking to the American people. Don't you need to uphold the Constitution? I don't know. You don't need to see anything else, folks. This is it. And in addition to everything that we've been saying, do not expect this man to leave peacefully or willingly. I do not think he will ever leave. That does not mean he won't leave. He won't die. He won't be, arrested, but he is not going to willingly or peacefully vacate the presidency, right? Like it's Charlton Heston holding the rifle, right? That famous quote, they'll take this, they'll have to pry this from my cold, dead hands. That's how he will get rid of the presidency because he loves it. He has the power. He has the money. He profits off of his bitcoins. Everyone gives him verbal fellatio. He can punish all his critics. It's a great gig. To quote Mel Brooks from History of the World, it's good to be the king. So why would he ever leave? And also the oligarchy, the right wing, the wealthy, they love him. Why? Because, Danielle, they get their tax cuts, right? Yep. They weaken the dollar. They get to just gut all regulations. They get to dismantle. This is the white Christian nationalists. They get to dismantle the separation of church and state. They get to punish and destroy our children so they can be wealthy. And as they're eating, steak and burgers and foie gras and whatever else the French words that I can't pronounce, and all the truffles, right? And enjoying themselves and getting bitcoins and meme coins and buying, nice clothes and golfing, because that's what the regular Americans do. They go and spend the weekend golfing at clubs that they can't afford because they don't have the money or the reputation to get in. They're telling the rest of us, as we are having trouble to afford eggs, as we're terrified about shelves being empty in the summer. That was the warning of the Target and Walmart CEOs to Donald Trump in an off-the-record meeting. As we're seeing countries retaliate, he is telling people, please, Danielle, tell them what he's saying to the girls.
Like, again, this is Donald Trump in the interview on Meet the Press. Quote, I don't think a beautiful baby girl that's 11 years old needs to have 30 dolls. I think they can have 3 dolls or 4 dolls. They don't need to have 250 pencils. They can have 5. And I want you to think about that. And again, none of this is a joke. None of this should have us rolling our eyes. But Donald Trump is saying to us about our children what it is that they do and don't deserve. But when it comes to his child and his children, this is 20 some odd years ago in Trump Tower with Barron riding a, stuffed lion from FAO Schwartz and driving in a Mercedes toy truck and sitting in gold-plated living room. This is what their children are afforded because they deserve it because of what? Their genes, their birth, their what? And so it's just like, you look at this and I'm like, and people like, it's so absurd because people who are watching America from outside of America are like, how? Like, how are so many millions of you asleep? How are so many millions of you duped by billionaires who tell you that you don't need health care because that's socialism? You don't need a livable wage because that's socialism. And you fucking believe it and vote against your own rights. And this is how his family is living while he's telling your family that you don't need as many eggs and dolls and as much gas as you want, because those things are a fucking luxury in Trump's America while his family lives like this.
White supremacy is a hell of a drug. White supremacy, misogyny, and greed. Those sins are going to destroy America. They're destroying America. And, and also Christian nationalism. All of those are combined, right? Some people think that for the sake of Jesus to come back, they need Donald Trump, a vulgarian, to be in power because then he will punish the gays and the women and the atheists and everyone else who's not Christian. So the Hindus, the Buddhists, the Jews, and the Muslims. That's how he wins over some Black Christians. That's how he won over a lot of Latino men. That's how he won over even some Muslims, right? So they play the culture war. Nothing new. Divide and conquer. Goes back to white supremacy. We, the whites, will allow you to be the model minority, but you have to be our enforcers. In turn, we'll give you a banana. Are you happy? Like, ooh, a banana. Yes. And then guess what? The ladder that you use to climb up, you're going to have to pull that ladder, right? So that nobody else can come up. And now you are better than them. Ooh, I could be better than someone. I could kick someone. Aha. That's how all the people of color who voted for Donald Trump, that's how a lot of them work. I know it's painful for people to hear. I come from some of these communities. Danielle comes from these communities, the immigrant communities. For the rest, openly white supremacy, right? We're going to make America white again. If that means tanking our reputation, our allies, our economy, we don't care. We're going to go back to 1920s, before, civil rights, before Brown versus Board of Education, before the Immigration Nationality Act, right? That's literally when they want to go back to, folks, the 1920s and the 19th century, right? All of their policies are policies from 100 years ago. None of it makes sense. It doesn't matter. The world has changed. It's been 100 years. It's more global. It's more multicultural, right? We import more than we export. We don't manufacture shit, right? But we send other stuff like technology and services. They don't care. They want to, it's very important, going back to the whole pop culture. They want to will a narrative that exists in their mind into reality, right? The narrative of We used to build stuff. Men used to be men. Women used to be women. White people were on top. The blacks and the darkies and the browns knew their place. And even though it is impossible to get that reality back, we will it, or we will kill and die trying. And I think that's what people need to realize.
You know, you say that you don't know if it's possible for it to happen. And I like for it to go backwards to this white supremacist fantasy that they are concocting one policy measure at a time by dismantling the Smithsonian, by gutting education, by rolling back vaccines and rolling back information and research and making it so the latest. And I want to jump forward because I think that it's actually important because it goes along again with the pop culture conversation, which is that Trump says he will implement 100% tariffs on films produced outside of the US. The movie industry in America is dying. And I want, again, when folks are just like, oh, I don't give a shit about Hollywood, like, what difference does that make? That has no bearing. Again, this is propaganda at its highest. If the way that most people learn about the world around them, because guess what, folks, more than half of this country does not have a passport. The way that you see and understand the world is through art, is through film. And what Donald Trump is saying is, oh, no, you're just going to make things here. And then what I'm going to ensure that you do is that you will never be able to say anything bad, anything about America that is not glorified, that is not birth of a nation, but make it 2025. That is not like about the greatness of white men, the power of white men and whiteness. And that is what control looks like. And so when he says other countries are offering all sorts of incentives to draw our filmmakers and studios away from the United States, Hollywood and many other areas within the USA are being devastated. This is a concerted effort by other nations and therefore a national security threat. So now, learning about the world around us, having films like that just won the best documentary done by an Israeli and Palestinian about the West Bank, that is considered a national security threat. Films like that are showcasing history, right? That are about Black cultures that is considered a national security threat. So anything that is not white and white supremacist centered and white male dominated and straight and gendered is now a national security threat. And if you think that this type of shit is a joke, it is all connected back to the imagery we showed at the beginning of the show, right? Like, you need to control every bit of narrative, control critical thinking, control what people see and hear, how they ingest. It's the reason why, right, Waj, that Hitler, the Nazis, they destroyed all art. They destroyed museums. They pillaged them.
Well, this is exactly, and not just Nazis, this is exactly what Mussolini did in Italy. It's the exact same fascist playbook, right? They want to control culture and control the narrative, right? They want to purge it of anything that might be critical of them or any individuals or groups that do not fit the master narrative. And guess what? It was a disaster. Folks who don't follow the movie industry, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? It gives people jobs, right? It also is one of our, for better or worse, popular exports. Culture. Pop culture is one of the most popular and beloved American exports around the world. Trust me, I've traveled around the world, right? So if you are now saying that you're going to have 100% tariffs on any movies made outside of America, what you're saying is the following. The biggest blockbusters, folks, right? Do you know how they make their money? Not due to U.S. domestic box office. That's not how they make their money. China, India, Brazil, right? So now if you're depriving the US film market, those foreign markets, Danielle, you know what's going to happen? Hundreds of millions of dollars of loss in movies, number one. Number two, I was just reading yesterday, just randomly, that one of the most expensive movies ever made was The Last Jurassic Park. They filmed it in the UK. Why? Because UK is inviting US business, right? So UK, they went, spent money in UK, filmed in the UK, right? Gave all those people jobs. UK gave them $100 million tax break. So imagine those countries like, oh, you're going to put 100% tariff on us? F you. You can't film in our country anymore, right? So there you go. America's what? Now more isolated, right? Movie prices are probably going to go what? Up. They're already up. I have a family of 5. It's hella expensive, right? That's what you make into an event. Okay. So price of X have gone up. Price of movie tickets are gone up. Americans are already hated around the world. American tourism to America has gone down. Foreign countries are going to retaliate. We can't film our movies out there. We can't get tax breaks. Foreign markets are like, China's like, I don't need you. China doesn't. China, folks, has such a robust film industry that China says, oh, you're going to do 100% tariffs? Okay, guess what? Superman, Fantastic Four, Jurassic Park, all these movies are going to open in China and you're going to get like $250 million? No. Now imagine all that money. Who's going to lose it? U.S. studios. U.S. studios, are they going to cut? They're going to fire people.
Yep.
Disaster, folks. Down the line, disaster. So how does this help America? It doesn't. Mussolini tried it. It failed. But like you said, the reason why they did it, nationalism, right? Propaganda, control, punish, bend the knee. And the rest of the world now, beyond 1940s, is much more robust and sophisticated. And literally India and China can look at us and say,
bye. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this is then what happens, right? Kirsten, Welker, again, we're talking about millionaires and billionaires and whether or not they'll stand up and what happens. Kristen Welker says, what did you say to Jeff Bezos to make him take down the tariffs, to educate the public on the fact of their goods and services going up because of Donald Trump's tariffs? Trump says, oh, he's just a nice, very nice guy. We have a relationship. I asked him about it and he said, I don't want to do that. And he took it off immediately. So the idea is also to cause a distinct amount of pain and harm, right? And then gaslight you into believing that it's always been this way, right? To make you think like, oh, well, you shop on Amazon every fucking day. And all of a sudden the stuff that you're buying is being marked up 50%, but Jeff Bezos isn't making a big deal about it. So it must not really be a big deal. I just need to work harder, right? Maybe I just need a second, third, fourth job, because also this is connected to the grind and assault of hypercapitalism. So if you can't afford more, right, that's your problem. That's your failure. That's why they have such disgust for the poor. That's why all of these programs and institutions are being dissolved, because in their mind, if you are not wealthy and born in that way, that is your biggest failure, right? And you don't deserve anything. You don't deserve a house because we're cutting government housing. You don't deserve SNAP, so we're cutting food. You deserve nothing. Because if I was able to succeed, it doesn't matter whether or not you started the race at the fucking finish line with the medal already around you. The gun went off and somehow mysteriously you're the winner. Right? Like it's the distortion, folks, that is now on hyperdrive. And it like, watch, like when we like these images and the things that are being said and the inundation and the flooding of the zone of all of it is being cranked up for a reason.
Yep.
Because I said, and I wrote this, folks, and I put it up on Substack today, and I said that like to keep us off kilter is exactly it's the point. Right? Like you have to flood the zone. You have to keep people off kilter. Why? Because then you don't have the ability to actually form a resistance when you're just trying to survive, when you're trying to duck each and every single headline and policy that's coming out. You're just trying to make it. And if I create and manufacture the crisis that makes it so that you can just survive, then you're not going to be thinking about your neighbor. You're not going to be thinking about the collective, because you're just going to be focused on what you can do for you. And that adds to the mayhem, that adds to the cruelty that everyone begins to embody, because it's coming in from on high.
You know, can I give an analogy real quick? And it's so on point, especially if you've traveled around the world. My family's originally from Pakistan. I've been to Pakistan many times. Countries around the world, you know, Danielle's family's from Jamaica. It's not that people don't have the capacity to share, to be empathetic, but it's about survival. And I'll give you an example. I'll never forget this, Danielle. I was in Bangkok for work several years ago, right? Thailand. And, you know, you're going around the Bangkok International Airport, and I don't know, I'm sure black people do this also. You see brown people like, oh, some browns, a few more browns. All right. You know, you spot them. And I'm like, all right. And the fellow browns, we're all heading in the same direction. So I'm like, all right, we're probably going to the Karachi gate, the Karachi, Pakistan gate. Everyone's behaving. Everyone's fine. Everyone's civil. Everyone's normal. Everyone's following the rules, right? Fascinating. We get to the Karachi gate, Danielle. As soon as we get to the Karachi gate, the entire vibe changes, okay? So the same people who were civil, knew how to follow the rules, right? As soon as we get to the gate, it became like Hunger Games, scarcity of resources. Now, why? Is it because we're like predisposed to mayhem? Of course not. I'll never forget that literally, as soon as the flight attendant, you know, picked up the you know, all right, zone 1, zone 2, as soon as she went, everyone rushed. Forget zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. Everyone rushed and everyone tried to get in first, right? And then we were on the plane. The plane lands in Karachi. All these same people were right there with me in Bangkok International Airport. Everyone was perfectly fine. No one gave an F about, all right, everyone, just we're going to, you know, rows 1 through 10, 10 through 20. Literally, as soon as the plane was taxiing, everyone was getting their luggage, trying to get out the door first, right? Why? And I never forgot this, is because when you're in an environment, when you realize following the rules doesn't matter, the system is rigged, no one's looking out for you, right? The infrastructure won't hold. You have to do what, Danielle?
You have to be every person for themselves.
Every person for themselves. So someone who didn't see that, they could simply be racist and be like, look at these Pakistanis. They don't know how to No, I saw them. They all know how to follow the rules, right? But it was a realization that my country does not look after me. The leadership does not look after me. Everyone's corrupt. The army's in control. The politicians are getting richer, right? So I have to take care of myself. Why should I be the only fool? That's how Donald Trump says only fools pay taxes and follow the rules. Why should I be the only fool who stops at a red light where everyone else gives 0 Fs and does whatever they want? Danielle.
I mean, but that's the point. And folks are saying in the comment section, like, that is the chaos is the point. But I want people to understand that the chaos is being manufactured, right? It's like living inside of the matrix, and the architect has the plans that is saying, like, this is the system we're going to take down here, and then we're going to take down this wall, and then we're going to take down this wall. We're going to destabilize.
That's right.
Every space and every place. Right. And then why? What does that create? It creates the conditions that allow and justify violence on behalf of the state. Right. You create the conditions for the absolute chaos and depravity, and then you sit back and you watch people tear each other apart.
There you go.
For the scraps that are left behind. And then you say, well, this is why we need the tanks. This is why we need the militarized police, because these people, right, the blacks and the browns, they don't know how to act. Right? It isn't about what you've taken away, what you've purposefully done to create the conditions and then thrown in a loaf of bread to 7 million people, right? Like, and then said, what? At least there's bread there.
There you go.
So it is also, I want to say this because I want for us to be able to close with this today. It is also to create the conditions with regard to the propaganda, what you see and what you hear, so that you are okay, you are comfortable with the us versus them
There you go.
mentality, right? That you are okay and comfortable with the grotesque lack of humanity that we are seeing in the world. And you just say, well, some people, that's just where they live. That's just what they're accustomed to. That's just what it is in that part of the world. And I give you
There you go.
the starvation, the manufactured starvation and torture that is happening to the people of Gaza. And while the world sits back and says, well, Israel has a right to defend themselves, you do not defend yourself by manufacturing starvation. And then the rest of the world just sits back and says, well, that is their right. It is obscene. It is fucking obscene what we have allowed, and think that it is okay. Think that it is normal. This is normal human behavior. To sit back and we think that us, just not buying 85 packages is going to stop. Like this kind of fucking greed and starvation and heinousness. And we just say, well, that's what happens in that side of the world. That's what happens to those people.
That's how they are.
The propaganda and the lies to take hold, and then our actions or our inaction justify this type of manufactured fucking catastrophe. And, I say this because it is like everything just seems so heinous right now. Watch, like everything. You start off with this picture of Donald Trump as the Pope, and you end with the real picture of human beings, of fucking children starving to death. And Donald Trump says, some just need to have less because they are less and they are less deserving. And the rest of us say, well, at least it's not me. And the reality is it's not you today, but it will be you someday soon.
That's just how things are in that part of the world. That's just how these people are. There's nothing we can do about it. They just hate each other. They're not civilized. All we can do is pray for them. And Danielle, I want people to read this. The effect of Israel's total siege has become catastrophic, doctors say. Food, water, and medicine shortages are prompting a surge of, and this is what I want to stress, preventable illnesses and deaths. I'm going to repeat that. Preventable illnesses and deaths. What you're witnessing right now is a choice made by Sith lords, people like Donald Trump, people like Benjamin Netanyahu, who have decided in their abuse of power to demonize and destroy an entire people. Look at that photo right there. That's a kid. Israel has killed more kids in Gaza in the past 2 years than all other kids that have been killed in all the war zones around the world combined. Sit with that for a second. Gaza has deliberately been starved. They have bragged. Israel has bragged about blocking off water, electricity, and food, right? There is a famine, a manufactured famine. There are no more schools left for these kids. Israel bombed all the schools, bombed hospitals, bombed refugee camps with U.S. missiles, U.S. money and aid, and U.S. diplomatic cover. Joe Biden, I know there's Democrats here. We have to be very fair here. The person who enabled this and would have enabled it if they were president was Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave this a green light. I don't know what's wrong with Joe Biden. His trademark empathy for Palestinians is non-existent. Those aren't my words. Those are people who work in the Biden administration. Benjamin Netanyahu crossed every single one of Joe Biden's red lines, and Joe Biden said, cross another one. All right. So this is Democrats. This is Republicans. This is America. This is Israel. This is what happens when Sith lords get in power, see everyone else as less than human, and are perfectly finding a solution to the problem. And everyone says, like you said, Danielle, that just happens in Israel, Palestine. Nope, folks. It happened in South Africa under apartheid.
Yep.
It's happening to the Uyghurs right now in China. It's happening to the Rohingya. And it happened to black folks in America. And when the Sith Lord comes and says the rest of us are murderers and rapists and criminals and pedophiles, well, what do you think is going to happen, folks? So I don't know, maybe 3 plane loads of brown immigrants without due process will be sent to a foreign gulag in El Salvador to die. Maybe, I don't know, Mahmoud Khalil and Rameza Ozturk will be detained away and kept away from their families for thought crimes. Maybe there'll be executive orders that'll go after white Christian men like Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor, white Christian conservative men, simply because they pissed off Donald Trump. Maybe, folks, just maybe, you might be the enemy from within who will be greeted with the National Guard or the military as you hold out your little pan like Oliver Twist, begging for some crumbs, because these mother effers, unlike Marie Antoinette, they ain't going to give you the cake. They're going to eat the cake. And then if you're lucky, you'll get the crumbs, folks. And we always want to end on some good news. As we're seeing the Jedi, the Siths, there are some Jedis. You know, that Pope Francis, you can criticize Catholicism and the Catholic Church. It's you know, the institution as itself has many sins. But the Pope Francis was a Jesuit, a man for others, faith through service, a person who in his final sermon, folks, talked about Israel and Palestine, urged for a ceasefire, right? A person who used his final sermons to criticize the greed and the cruelty of the Trump administration without naming it. He was naming it, and talked about welcoming migrants and undocumented migrants, right? And in furtherance of his legacy, not the legacy of this mother effer. Hold on one second. Not this. I have to go back. See, I'll compare and contrast as we end this, folks. Not this. In the legacy of true Catholicism and the Jesuits, some good news is that the Catholic Church is going to use the Pope Mobile. Tell him what the Pope Mobile will be used for now, Danielle.
So before his death, Pope Francis made one final request that his Pope Mobile, the vehicle from which he once greeted crowds around the world, be transformed into a mobile health unit for children of Gaza. The initiative now underway is led by Caritas Jerusalem, which is outfitting the vehicle with diagnostic tools, vaccines, suture kits, and emergency supplies to treat displaced and malnourished children. Once humanitarian access is restored, the clinic will travel to isolated parts of Gaza where medical care has collapsed. This is a concrete life-saving intervention at a time when the health system in Gaza has almost completely collapsed. And it has not collapsed on its own. As Waj said, and as I started out with, this is manufactured crises. This is not just a vehicle, added Secretary General Peter Brunn. It is a message that the world has not forgotten about the children in Gaza. Pope Francis famously said, children are not numbers. They are faces, names, stories, and each one is sacred. And this is the image of the vehicle. You know, some days on this show on Mondays is harder than others. And it is because the time that we are in is excruciating. And it isn't to just be laughed at and shrugged off and numbed and to just like speed through and move through. It is to be felt. And the reason I say that is because the gaslighting that has happened over centuries has allowed for us to be in this place, right? The numbing, the distracting that we have done in this country has allowed for Donald Trump and people like him to seize power because we didn't want to deal with the past. So now we're being forced to face this in our present again. And the decision that we are being given is, will we decide to be different this time than those that came before us, right? Will we decide to actually forge a path forward that is going to be hard, but needs to happen? And that is something those are the questions that we try and grapple with here on Democracy-ish on a weekly basis. And so, there are 1,500 of you in here today, and we ask that if you have not subscribed to the channel, that you subscribe, that you hit the bell, you hit like. For those that have shared their resources today with your donations, Barb, who always gives money literally every single show, and I can't thank you enough. Lucy, Jules, and others. We're incredibly grateful. And yeah, just incredibly grateful that you all continue to show up here on Mondays and Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And Waj and I are doing another midweek show on Substack. On Waj's Substack. Oh, well, both of our Substacks midweek on Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, did we say?
Yeah, Wednesday.
On Wednesday. And so do make sure that you are subscribed to both of our Substacks as well. I will put up Waj's one more time. The left hook. The left hook. We give all of our content out for free because we are terrible capitalists. Mine is the damn.
Go back to yours.
Is the damn digest. And again, you can subscribe, and if you choose to want to be able to support us monthly, you can do so on that platform.
How many subscribers do you have?
I have 23.3. We're on the hunt for 25, and it's slow and steady. So again, if you have not hit subscribe. Oh, Waj, people are asking what time on Wednesday. What did we say?
I don't know. It's up to you. What did you say?
I think we might have said 3:00.
Wait. Wednesday. Okay, so Wednesday 3:00. Yes, and guess what, folks? We're gonna do something a bit different this time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I love pop culture, as you can tell. I also love sports. Danielle and I, believe it or not, in addition to talking about politics and current affairs, we want to talk about a lot of different things, and they all intersect. And I think there's something happening right now which is very important. Ryan Coogler, who's a filmmaker from the Bay Area, Oakland, has made this movie called Sinners. Sinners cost $90 million to make. Warner Brothers gave him this kind of deal that is given to a lot of white filmmakers and not black filmmakers. And this movie has become a cultural phenomenon, right? And when that movie came out the first week, it just like did amazing business, but the framing of it was so interesting. It was almost like the industry was rooting against him. They're like, this movie has just almost set a record for independent, original, R-rated movie, but will it break even? And everyone was like, bro, the movie, the first 3 days made $75 million over a $90 million budget. And there's a lot happening there. The intersection of race, history, culture, pop culture, investing in original art, American art, DEI, bucking the trend. So I've been telling Danielle, have you seen Sinners? She's like, huh? No. Danielle, have you seen Sinners? Huh? No. And then finally, I'm like, you have to go see Sinners. So we're going to talk about Sinners on Wednesday. It's our first, if you will, pop culture show. There'll be some spoilers. Try to check it out if you can, because there's a lot in that movie that it's not just pop culture and movies. There's a lot about history, pop culture, the symbolism, white supremacy, community building, music, and also in the context of Donald Trump's attacks on DI and cinema. That movie and what's happening behind the scenes to that movie, I think, is right on point.
Yeah, and just to show how incredible it's doing is that it was sold out all over Brooklyn this weekend. So I text Waj last night and I was like, we're not doing this tomorrow, right? Because I was only able to get tickets for tonight, Monday. So
check it out in IMAX. Did you see it in IMAX?
No, because that's not because that's in the city. So I'm seeing it tonight. So I say this as a special announcement that the Danielle Moodie show is going to be a pre-record because I have to go and watch Sinners at 4 p.m. And so the Danielle Moodie show today at 5 is going to be a pre-record. But do not worry.
It is not that gory. It is not that gory. No, I won't ruin it for you. It's actually, TV has much more gore in it. And the gore, it's for, trust me, it's just a little bit bloody, but only in the second half. Not too bad.
And for folks that were asking, Wednesday, the Substack show that Waj and I will be doing at 3 p.m. will be Eastern. It is Eastern. We operate in Eastern time because we're biased because we're on the East Coast. So it'll be 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday on our Substack. So do make sure to make a note of that. And actually, Waj, I think that we can pre-post it so people can save it into their calendar. So we'll figure that out. But I will remind you all that it is coming. That
So
is
if you
it.
can tonight or tomorrow or Wednesday, if you have a moment, first of all, it's a really good movie. Second of all, it's a cultural phenomenon, so it's a good water cooler event, which is few and far between. And join us if you can. We're gonna do something different, but I trust me, everything we've talked about, all the themes, we're gonna just unpack it through the lens of pop culture and this movie. I'm very curious to hear Danielle's feedback. I am very confident she will like it.
I
Let's see.
like everything Kugler does, so I'm excited to see it. All right, dear friends, that is it for us here on Democracy Ish. We appreciate each and every single one of you. Join us on Wednesday, 3 p.m. on Substack, and Democracy Ish will be back on Friday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Regardless of whether or not we have a country, we continue to show up. So we appreciate you. Be well.